Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a Swiss trip breakdown. I recently went to Switzerland for 12 days and I basically just wanted to do a video to tell you guys like some tips and tricks, how I planned it and basically the cost of it all, just so if you're also planning a trip like this then you can get an idea of like how's best to do it and what it's going to cost. So I have my notebook so I can cover everything. What I am going to be covering in this video is my itinerary, my must visit places, like my top places to go, how I planned the trip, so like how I planned where I was going to go, where I was going to stay, how long for. I'm going to cover the travel pass options that I looked at and what made me pick the one I did. I'm also going to suggest some apps that I used and websites that I used whilst I was on the trip. And then finally we're going to go into the budget breakdown and I'm going to be fully transparent with you guys and tell you everything I spent. I tracked it all so I know exactly what I spent. So yeah, let's start by getting into the itinerary section. I'd already have the Swiss vlogs up on my page, so if you've already watched them then you might not be interested in seeing my itinerary, but if you have come just for the planning video then I will tell you now a breakdown of what I did day by day. So day one, I literally just arrived in Zurich and I took a train into the city centre and I checked into my hotel, which was an easy hotel. I'm going to go into more detail on my hotels later. For day two, I spent most of the morning and the early afternoon exploring Zurich, and then I took a train and a bus to Vaduz in Liechtenstein. Day three, I checked out of my hotel, stored my luggage, went to the Lindt Chocolate Factory, and then I took a train to Lucerne, checked into my new hotel and did some sightseeing around there that evening. Day four, I did a day trip to Stews. Day five, I did the Pilates trip. I spent most of the day up there and then spent the evening, my final evening, just out in Lucerne. On day six, I took the panoramic train to Interlaken, and then from Interlaken, I went to Spiez, which was my next hotel. I explored Spiez that afternoon and then went to the Hardekolm for dinner. Day seven, I went paragliding in the morning. I went with Paragliding Interlaken, which I do 100% recommend. I'm not going to talk about it anymore in this video, but it was just an amazing experience. So if you have the budget and the opportunity to do it, definitely do it. I spent the rest of that day at Itinerary. I did a 3.5 hour hike around the lake and it was stunning. On day 8 I went to Zermatt and I took the Gornergrat railway to Gornergrat and I hiked down for a bit and then took the train back down. Day 9 I did a bit of a tour around Lake Breens, so I went to Itzerwald and Giesbach. I'm sorry about my pronunciation by the way in these videos. And then I went to Argorge in the afternoon. Day 10, I spent the day in Bern and then Thun on my way back to Spiez. Day 11 was my final full day. It was quite jam-packed. I started at Grindelwald first. I did the first cliff walk, I did the zip line, and I did mountain karting. Then I went to Lauterbrunnen and I took the cable car up to Mürren. Then I did the Mürren to Gimmelwald hike. And then I took the train all the way to Basel for my final hotel for just one night, because then on day 12 I flew home. Now based on that, I'm going to move on to the must visit section of this video. So the places that I think are absolutely a must visit. If you only have a short amount of time, I would recommend staying in or around Interlaken. Obviously I stayed in 4 places over my trip, but staying in Spiez was my favourite. If you want that true Swiss experience of being surrounded by mountains and lakes, that is the place you need to stay. And then the top things I did on my trip, which are like the absolute highlight, the top 3 that you have to do, is the Itinerary Lake. It was the most stunning place I've ever been, the best hike I've ever done, and I just dream about it. I will never get it out of my head. It was the most stunning place ever. Number 2 on my list is Zermatt and doing the Gornergrat. I actually added this as like a bit of a last minute activity. I knew I wanted to go to Zermatt. I originally wanted to do the 5 Lakes hike, but it wasn't open at the time of year that I went. So I wanted to see the Matterhorn, but I had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. I think the night or 2 nights before I found the Gornergrat and I booked it, and it was such an amazing experience. The views of the Matterhorn, I was so lucky that I was able to see them because it was a bit of a cloudy day at the start, but I just think it was such a nice experience, especially if you're not so into hiking. Then you can just take the train, but I did a mix of both hiking and the train, so I definitely recommend that. And number 3 on my list is doing Grindelwald first, Lauterbrunnen, and the Muren to Gimmelwald hike. I know that is like quite a few things, but you can do it all in one day, and I absolutely loved this day. Grindelwald first was amazing. I did 2 activities, as I said, but if you're gonna only do one, the mountain karting was like so much fun. You can go as fast or as slow as you want. I wouldn't recommend going crazy fast because 1, like, you are on the edge of cliff faces, and 2, you just don't want the experience to end quickly. Like, I had so much fun taking stops, taking pictures, and just like mountain karting down a mountain. Like, that's so fun. Lauterbrunnen was absolutely stunning. I'm such a fan of waterfalls, and I think there's like 72 or something in Lauterbrunnen. I did not see them all, that's for sure, but it was still stunning. And then the Muren to Gimmelwald hike was actually a last minute addition to my itinerary. I've had this rough itinerary planned for over a year now, I'm gonna say, and I only added this about a week before I went, but it was one of my favourite things I did. It's about a half an hour walk, all downhill, so it's really easy, but it's just like stunning. The views of the valley the whole way were gorgeous. Muren is so nice. I would love to go back at Christmas time. I bet it's so cute and Christmassy. And Gimmelwald is also such a cute mountain village, and I feel like you have to get up into at least one mountain village when you're in Switzerland. So those are my top 3 things that I think you have to do if you're going. So now I'm going to move on to the how I planned section of this. Bear in mind that I have been planning this for a long time. This has taken so much research, and if you want to put this effort in, obviously go for it, but if you want to just copy what I've done, also I'm very happy for you to do that. I went on Google Maps over literally years, and every time I've seen something like on TikTok or Instagram where I'm like, that looks stunning, I've pinned it on Google Maps. So this is what my Google Maps looks like of Switzerland. And from having all those pins, I basically like saw what was in similar areas. So I can see, you know, a few things around Zurich, a few things around Lucerne, and a few things around Interlaken. There was a few things further south, but I decided to keep those as my 3 main points. Basel, I basically added onto the end because I was flying home from Basel. I just decided to do that loop, especially as I wanted to see Bern. Originally, when I was planning this, I planned for my final day to be going from Spiez, having a stop in Bern, and then making my way up to Basel. I ended up changing that on my actual trip just due to weather, but that is why I decided to end in Basel. Makes a bit more sense that way. So basically from Interlaken, for example, I would Google Maps, how long does it take to get to Zermatt or Kandersteg, because they were the 2 trips that I was doing further south, and it was like 2 hours max, I think. So I decided that I would do those trips from Interlaken because I didn't want to move about too much. I wanted to have some time where I could settle into a hotel. So now that I knew that I wanted to spend time in Zurich, Lucerne and Interlaken, I divided the activities and the pins I had. So for example, in Lucerne I had stews and Pilates pinned nearby, so I knew I would need 1 day full for stews and 1 full day for Pilates. So I decided to stay in Lucerne for 3 nights so I could have time on each half day to explore Lucerne and then 1 full day for each activity. If you have a big activity like Pilates, like a full mountain excursion, I would recommend leaving 1 full day for it. You probably won't need it, but it's better to have extra time than not enough. Things like the Lindt Chocolate Factory or the Harder Comb you can do in 1 morning or 1 evening, so I put them in on days with other things. And that's basically how I planned how many days I would need at each location and how many nights I would need to book for each hotel. So I settled on 12 days, and then I researched on Expedia which hotels I might want to stay in. I wanted to stay relatively central for all of them, not too far from the train stations, so I would look on the map view to research that. So I am going to talk about all the prices later on, but I do just want to state that I know I could have done my hotels cheaper if I was staying in hostels. I've never stayed in a hostel before. I'm a type of person who does like my own space, and I was open to staying in a hostel if I could have my own space. Like, I've seen plenty of good hostels online where you can either shut a door or shut a curtain across your bed, but every Swiss hostel I looked at did not have that option. It was just completely open beds, and to be honest, it just wasn't something I was comfortable doing on this trip. So yeah, basically the verdict is that hostels in Switzerland were not for me, but they are a cheaper option if you are comfortable with that. For example, in Interlaken, there's a very famous youth hostel right next to the train station. For the time that I spent there, it would have cost £306, but instead I spent £681 on my hotel. So obviously that is over double the price of what I could have spent if I went cheaper. But for me, I decided I would rather spend that time saving so I could spend more money and be really comfortable with where I was staying. So I ended up picking the Easy Hotel in Zurich, the Hotel Krone in Lucerne, and La Belle Vue in Spiez, which is a boutique hotel. I would recommend all these hotels. They were all lovely. I also stayed in the Radisson Blu in Basel, which was fine. I was only there for one night, so yeah, it did the trick. My favourite hotels were actually the Zurich Hotel and the one in Spiez, because the Zurich Hotel had a communal microwave and the one in Spiez had a communal mini fridge and kettle. So in Zurich I was able to save a bit of money by eating microwave meal, and then in Spiez I was able to save a lot of money because I actually bought mug shots from Aldi. They're just like pot noodles, but they're in packets, so they pack flat in your suitcase and then you just add boiling water to them and you get a pasta. So I was able to save money on my dinners by eating those. I also am such a type A traveller. I love to plan. So here is a PowerPoint I made, and I basically picked out some outfits that I might want to wear on each day. And I wouldn't usually do this, but basically I decided to try and travel light. So I took one backpack, one like kind of side bag, and then a small carry-on suitcase. But I did check the suitcase because I was taking food with me and like liquids and stuff. I didn't want to be limited on that. However, it was a small one, so I knew that I really was going to be packing tight. So I personally felt if I could plan out my outfits for each day, see what I can rewear and stuff, then that would help me pack, and it really did. Another thing I put a lot of research into was what time of year to go. I decided I wanted to go in shoulder season because it's way less busy, but that does mean like you are risking the weather a bit and not everything is open. All the hikes and funiculars typically open around like the first or second week of June. So as I mentioned before, I wasn't able to do the 5 Lakes hike at Zermatt that I really wanted to do because the transport up to the mountain wasn't available yet. And that's the same with the Stews Ridge hike. Only one of the chairlifts was open. So that's just 2 mistakes I made when planning this. If I knew those chairlifts weren't open when I was planning, then I would have gone a bit later. But overall, I'm really happy with the time I went. I wasn't super lucky with the weather. Like, I would have loved a bit more sun, but at the end of the day, I consider it... Honestly, I would have loved to have had a bit more sun, but I do consider myself quite lucky with the weather. For the time of year that I went, I only had one super rainy day, and I did see some really sunny days as well, so it was really nice. And one of the main benefits of going in the shoulder season at the beginning of June is that you don't need to book so much in advance. I have read that if you're going in peak season in the middle of summer, everything needs to be booked way in advance. The only thing I booked in advance was the Lindt Chocolate Factory and my seat reservation for the panoramic train between Lucerne and Interlaken. Those I would recommend pre-booking. However, everything else I booked like the night before I went, and it worked out perfectly because then I could adjust my itinerary based on the weather. The only thing I didn't book was a time slot for Pilates, which did leave me waiting 2 hours for a time slot. So I would recommend booking a time slot for Pilates, but you could have done that the night before. I could have done that the night before. I just didn't know what time I was gonna get up and go. So that's the only thing I regret not booking in advance. So the next section of this video is going to be on travel passes. There are literally so many you can get in Switzerland and it can get a bit confusing. If you're doing a whole Swiss tour like I did, like moving locations, then you're going to want to look at the Swiss travel pass or the half fare card. But if you're going just to one location for a trip, then you might want to look more at regional passes. I'm not going to speak about them today because I didn't research into them personally, but I am going to speak about the half fare card and the Swiss travel pass. So the Swiss travel pass gets you free transport on trains, buses, trams, boats, pretty much everything, but not like mountain excursions. So not funiculars, not gondolas, cable cars, those sorts of things you have to pay separately. And then for any sort of mountain excursion or activity, it usually would get you 50% off the normal price. The Swiss half fare card also would get you 50% off those mountain excursions, and then it would also get you 50% off all those public transport options that I mentioned, so buses, trains, trams, all of that, you get 50% off instead of free transport. So obviously the Swiss travel pass is a lot more expensive because it gets you all that free transport. What I decided to do to figure it out, which was a fair amount of effort, but I'm happy to do the research, is make a spreadsheet. I listed out all the activities I wanted to do and then all the like bare minimum of trains I was going to get. Like at the very least, these are all the trains I'm going to get. I might get more, I might go on more boats and things, but this is the bare minimum. Then I put in all the prices for those activities with the Swiss travel pass and with the half fare card, and then I did the prices of all the trains with the half fare card. Obviously with the Swiss travel pass all those trains were free. So then I had all the prices of the activities for the Swiss travel pass, all the prices for the activities with the Swiss half fare card, and then I added the cost of those trains on. For each column I added the cost of the travel pass itself, and I've got my totals, I'll put them up on the screen as well. So the total for the Swiss travel pass was £853.66, and the total for the half fare card was £859.76. So there's literally like £6 in it, but as I said, that is literally the bare minimum of trains and stuff I was gonna get. I ended up getting way more buses, I made use of trams, I went on boats on the lakes and stuff, which was all included. So I definitely saved more than what that spreadsheet says by getting the Swiss travel pass. I ended up spending £352.26 on the travel pass, but as I said, like it saved me so much money. I got so many trains and stuff, and another reason I would recommend this over the Swiss half fare card is that you don't need to buy tickets. So there was a moment, if you watch my vlogs, where I did miss my stop on the train and I literally like ran to the other platform under the underpass, got on the other train coming back the other way so I could go back to my stop, and obviously I didn't have to worry about buying a ticket in that moment, which potentially would have made me miss my train. So there is the ease with the Swiss travel pass of literally just hopping on any public transport you want. And the Swiss travel pass did include my bus in Liechtenstein, so when I went to Vaduz that was also all covered. So now I'm going on to apps that I would recommend you get for your trip, starting with the Meteo Swiss app. This is basically just a weather app, but it's just for Switzerland, so it's going to be way more accurate than any of the typical apps you might be using. Like at home I use BBC Weather, but the Meteo Swiss app will just be way more accurate. One thing I found useful in there was looking at like the sunlight, because you can see when, like in what hours of the day you're going to get the most sunlight, and that would also hopefully mean the least amount of cloud. Obviously that's very useful for mountain excursions, you want minimal cloud, so I use this app so much when trying to plan what to do on each day, and that's why my itinerary from my original plan did switch up a bit, because I just changed things based on the weather. But I will say Swiss weather is so unpredictable. The second app I recommend using is the SBB app. I use this every day to see where I was going. If I wanted to get from, you know, Zurich airport to Zurich HB, I'd put that in the app. It would tell me what platform to go on, what time the train was, and any other details. It tells you how busy the train is, what carriages are what, like first class, more storage, second class, food carriage. If you need to buy tickets, do it on here instead of using the ticket stations. It's just easy to use. I also uploaded my Swiss travel pass onto here, so whenever I got checked, which is regularly. They do check your tickets regularly on Swiss trains, like most trains I got on, I got checked. So yeah, I just had my Swiss travel pass on there and I was able to show them that. Also, a side note on that, sometimes they do check your ID to make sure your name matches up with your Swiss travel pass, so make sure you have it on you. And the final thing I'd recommend, it's not really an app, but it's just going on the mountain excursion websites. So like Pilates, Itinerary, Stews, they all have their own websites and they have webcams, and that is just so useful to figure out like what sort of time of day you want to go up, or if you want to go up at all. Like, I wouldn't recommend going up to Pilates if it's cloudy, so just check the webcams, see if you can see, and that will help you plan basically. Okay, now I'm going to move into the final part of the video, which is the budget. I just want to say that I saved really hard for this trip. It was a dream trip of mine. I know I've spent a lot, and I'm not trying to brag by saying the prices of anything on here. I'm literally just trying to be educational so you can get an idea of how much this sort of trip costs if you want to replicate it. So starting with hotels, I spent 2 nights in the Easy Hotel in Zurich, 3 nights in Lucerne, 5 nights in Spiez and 1 night in Basel. The prices of these plus the tax I paid whilst I was there totaled to £1,510.96. This is all going to be in British pounds, by the way. I spent £119.22 on my flights, and that was going into Zurich from London Heathrow and then back to London Heathrow from Basel. Spent £27 on airport parking. I haven't included like fuel prices, but someone just drove my car, dropped me off. £352.26 on the Swiss travel pass, and then I'm just going to put in all the activities I did with all the individual prices, but overall the transport and activities did cost me £1,033.11. For food, I ate out at 3 different locations, which was Lauterbrunnen, McDonald's in Zermatt, and then the Harderkolm. So I've included 2 of those separately. Harderkolm I did not have a specific price for because I did pay for that in cash. I got out 40 Swiss francs in cash just in case I needed them. I didn't really end up using them, so I just spent them on this meal and then on some groceries. So just bear in mind that 40 Swiss francs was spent within this food. It is on the spreadsheet. So £24.86 in Lauterbrunnen, £20.13 in McDonald's, and then £39.86 on the Harderkolm meal plus some extra groceries. So, and then for every other meal I did just eat stuff from the grocery stores, from like Coop and Migros. So that came to £153.03. So food total was £237.88. So this was for 3 meals a day for 10 days, and then I had my dinner on the first day and my breakfast on the last. And then in my like miscellaneous section, I have souvenirs. So I spent £41.53 on souvenirs. That just includes magnets, pins, I bought a hat, and that also includes my Liechtenstein purchases. And then the other thing in this section is luggage storage. I stored my luggage twice when I was transferring between hotels, and that totaled to £16. So the big number, the total amount I spent on the entire trip is £2,839.48. Obviously that is a very expensive holiday, a very large amount of money, but I think it was so worth it. I would 100% do it again. I don't need to do it again because I have managed to see everything I wanted to see. The only thing you might have noticed that was on my itinerary that I didn't do was the Briensvoort Bahn. I got to a point in my trip where I was running out of good weather days. I didn't want to go up the mountain if it was going to be bad weather, and I felt like I'd been up enough mountains, so I did switch out my plans to do the R Gorge instead. So I would go back to Switzerland to do that. I would love to do the Stews hike on a good day and the 5 Lakes hike in Zermatt. But otherwise, I really feel like I've done a good amount of Switzerland, and it literally was my dream trip. I've had the best time. It's my favourite country I've ever visited, and I just think everyone should go, basically. There are cheaper ways you can do it. As I said, hostels, people love to camp there. You can drive there from the UK. Overall, it's always going to be an expensive trip, but there are definitely cheaper ways to do it than what I did, and way more expensive ways. I hope that you guys found this video useful. Let me know if you guys have any other questions. Hopefully I covered everything. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!